Hello and welcome. This is November 2025 Astrocosmology Report. We are having some fun as usual. I'm going to start out with the planets in retrograde. Then I'm going to talk about the major configurations, and then we'll jump into the transits by date. Um, there's still a lot going on, of course. So let's jump in. The first planet, major planet to go retrograde was Neptune back in July 4th. Still retrograde until December 10th. It's right now crossing back into Pisces, and it's going to stop at 29 degrees 22 minutes. So the last degree of Pisces, not even the last 38 minutes of the last degree of Pisces. Neptune's home sign is Pisces. And so we've gotten to review the first 2 degrees of Aries with Neptune and Aries. And then it went back on July 4th, started to go backwards. And now we're slipping back into Pisces for the last glimpse into the karma and the last degree of its home sign of Pisces. Then Neptune will be in Aries for about 14 years and won't come back into Pisces until about 145 years. So this is a major transition for all of us living here on this planet at this time. We will never see Neptune back in Pisces in our lifetimes. Of course, not for several generations. So what's happening now is kind of key to our experience. The second planet that went into retrograde was Saturn on July 12th at 1 degree 56 minutes of Aries. So it too, like Neptune, only got to touch into the first relatively 2 degrees of Aries before turning around in July, and then it's gone backwards. It stops going retrograde at 25 degrees of Pisces. So we get to review like the last 5 degrees of Pisces, whereas with Neptune, it's like basically the last degree and not even the last degree. And it'll go back to 25 degrees Pisces by November 27th. So at that point, it'll turn around and go forward again, then hitting the last 5 degrees of Pisces for the third time, and then leaving for about 30 years. So Pisces didn't even make it into the last 2 degrees of Aries before turning around and revisiting the last 5 degrees of Pisces. Basically, it's a last ditch effort to materialize the spiritual realm and put karmic structure to the mysticism and delusions of society. Then it'll be in Aries, Saturn, from February 13th of 26 until April 12th of 28. So almost 2.5 years there. Next is Chiron retrograde. Started on July 30th. Notice how all these started in July, these three. So Chiron went retrograde at 27 degrees of Aries on July 30th, and it'll continue retrograde until January 2nd of 26 at 22 degrees 35 minutes of Aries, where then it'll turn around and go forward again. So Chiron will finally be out of Aries with a brief preview into Taurus from June 19th, 2026 until September 17th of 26. Then it'll go back into Aries from September until April of 27. And then we'll finally be out of healing the masculine wound. So basically, this is the last review of the work before entering Taurus on July, for entering Taurus, and it'll stay in Taurus until July 18th of 2033. So we're going to get a long Chiron transit through Taurus. Fourth is Uranus retrograde. Similar to Saturn and Neptune, Uranus only went up to 1 degree 27 minutes, a degree and a half of Gemini, before turning around on September 6th. It's going to go back until 27 degrees 27 minutes of Taurus. That's happening on February 4th of 2026, where then it goes forward again, finishing up those last 3 degrees of Taurus and then staying in Gemini. So Uranus will leave Gemini retrograde. So it went up to 1 degree 27 minutes, and then it's been going backwards since September. On November 7th, it'll leave Gemini going into Taurus, excuse me, and then going back all the way to the 27th degree 27 minute of Taurus. So Uranus has been conducting a review of that first degree, introduction of what Uranus and Gemini means or feels like to have our collective mind upgraded. Uranus rules like electricity, the internet, upgrading electrical mental activity. And this could be another opportunity to review AI and the interjection of mental shifts and communications. So then Mercury retrograde. Yay, we all love Mercury retrograde. So this phase starts on November 9th, goes back to the, it starts on November 9th at 6 degrees of Sagittarius and goes backwards until the 29th of November at 20 degrees of Scorpio. So then we're going to review that last 10 degrees and the first 6 degrees of Sagittarius, the last 10 degrees of Scorpio. On the November 29th, it'll then go forward, reviewing that last 10 degrees of Scorpio for the third time. So this time we get to re-examine our belief systems as well as our deep, dark underworld of lies, secrets, and manipulations. Nothing like Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. So last is the Jupiter retrograde. And it's coming up. It's going to start on November 11th and go back to March 11th of 2026. It's going to start at 25 degrees of Cancer and go back to 15 degrees of Cancer by March 11th, like I said. So we're going to review those degrees 15 to 25 of Cancer with Jupiter retrograde. Like I said, it starts on November 11th. So this will be like that 10-degree review of the expansion of emotional sensitivity, caring, nurturing. This is an opportunity for all of us to go within and be our own internal sensitivity. Be with it. Take care of it. Feel into it. So those are the major retrogrades. Second, I want to talk about the major astrological configurations. And the first 3 are water trines. So a trine is like a triangle, right? Each of the 3 planets are within 120 degrees of each other. So the first one starts on November 9th to November 10th, and it's short because it involves the moon, which moves quickly. So we have Lilith at 25 degrees of Scorpio, trining the moon at 21 degrees of Cancer, Jupiter at 25 degrees of Cancer, and then trining Saturn at 25 degrees of Pisces. So this is harmonious working together, cooperation, collaboration between these planets. So you have Lilith and Scorpio, and I've talked about Lilith and Scorpio before, and there's lots of information online about it. It's basically like looking into the parts of the feminine experience that has been denied, repressed, um, manipulated by power structures, and pushed into the underworld. And we're basically going down there and retrieving that empowered feminine that's been denied, bringing her back up to the service and bringing her back up into the boardrooms, and she's going to be working with the moon and Jupiter, which are both in Cancer. So again, it's a water trine, so all the water signs, very emotional. It's an opportunity to tap into our emotional reality. And the moon is like the child within, right? Working with Jupiter, our social planet, social benefit planet, basically like what benefit we receive and experience from our social environment and our friends and our social network. And also trining Saturn, the other social planet. Saturn is more the restrictive boundaries and um, the repression of society. But in Pisces, it's kind of like putting structure to the spiritual karmic realms, and all working together with this moon and Lilith. The other grand trine happens from November 16th until the 22nd, and this involves Mercury working with Lilith and the Sun. So they come up to meet with Lilith at 26 degrees. Mercury and Lilith are at 26. The Sun is at 29. Then trine Jupiter at 25 still, and trine Saturn at 25. And Saturn is with Neptune at 29. So Neptune gets to be involved as well. So then the mind and the Sun, Mercury and the Sun, conjoin with Lilith, bringing much more awareness, much more mental activity, thought, perception, getting involved, and then working with the social planets, Jupiter and Saturn again, both in water signs. But then Neptune gets involved as well. So the mysticism, the spirituality, um, in Pisces, like, and it's Neptune's, like I just said earlier in the retrogrades. This is Neptune's last little dip into 29 degrees of Pisces, and so from the 16th to the 22nd, we're gonna get that spiritual, foggy mysticism allure involved as well in the trine. And then right after that, from November 23rd until the 27th, so about 4 days, it'll just be Mercury with Venus, trining Jupiter and Saturn. Excuse me. So I always have to drink a lot of water when I talk. I've talked about this before, but I'm not much of a talker. So when I do, my body's like, what? Anyways, so this other grand trine is Mercury at 24 degrees, and Venus at 20 degrees, both of Scorpio, trining Jupiter still at 24 degrees in its retrograde cycle of Cancer, and Saturn at 25 degrees now in a retrograde cycle of Pisces. So it'll be how the mind is able to express the feminine experience with regard to both aspects of social expansion, benefit, and social contraction and limitation. Then the wedges. So these are still new to me. I'm still playing with them and figuring them out, but they are a fascinating major configuration, and we have 4 of them this month. So the first one starts on November 16th and goes until January 17th of 2026, because these are all involving slower moving planets. So this one lasts a lot longer. It also starts first, interestingly enough. And these are successively starting. Um, the first one is the 16th, the second one is on the 17th, the third one is on the 18th, and the fourth one is on the 18th as well. And the other 3 only last a couple of days, maybe a week. But the first one lasts for basically 2 whole months, because it's involving just transpersonal planets that move quite slowly. So this first one is Uranus opposite Lilith, Uranus in Taurus, Lilith in Scorpio, and then you have Pluto up in Aquarius. So Uranus is opposite Lilith, excuse me. So it's like the upgrades that our minds are experiencing, these flashpoints of inspiration, intuition, insight, feels polarized from this deep dive that the feminine experience is going into, looking at the darkness and the control and manipulation, um, the upgrade that's happening around electricity on the planet. Those things are in opposition. But then you have Pluto up here in Aquarius at 1 degree, that's supporting both of these experiences. It's making a trine to Uranus, and so it's kind of like the huge transformation that's beginning in our society to create more of a egalitarian reality is supporting both of the opposition, the Uranus and the Lilith. The second wedge, like I said, starts the next day on on the 17th, and goes until November 24th, so about a week that we'll feel this. And it's the nodes, so North Node, South Node. So the nodes are in Virgo and Pisces, and Venus is in Scorpio. So Venus is going to be, the feminine is going to be supporting this kind of karmic path or trajectory that we're all experiencing with the Virgo Pisces axis or dynamic. So Virgo and Pisces, which the nodes are in a sign for about 18 months, and at 14 degrees we're about halfway through this experience, and it's about, so like the karma of the past karma of dealing with health and innocence and purity and earthy groundedness and nature and respecting nature. And then we're trying to understand more of our karmic experience. And then Venus doing this deep dive in Scorpio at 14 degrees is supporting this evolutionary trajectory that we're all um, manifesting and experiencing. The next is starting on the 18th, like I said, and just goes for a couple of days until the 20th, because it involves the sun. So this is Uranus opposite Lilith, but now the sun is involved. And then um, instead of Pluto, now it's Saturn and Neptune supporting the opposition between Uranus and Lilith. But again, Lilith is with the sun, so we have this kind of upgrade, erratic change, evolutionary force. The last degree of Taurus, 29 degrees of Taurus, opposite Lilith at 26 degrees, and the sun at 25 degrees of Scorpio. So our attention, our awareness is going to be brought to more of the Lilith dynamic in this wedge. And then Saturn, Neptune together at 25 and 29 degrees of Pisces are going to be supporting this opposition dynamic. So basically the structure and that we're trying to manifest around our spiritual karma is supporting this polarization between the up leveling that's happening on our planet and the awareness of how manipulated and repressed the feminine has been. And then also starting on the 18th, but going until November 24th, we have Mercury retrograde joining up with Lilith at 26 degrees. Now the sun is up at up past at 29 degrees, and it's trining Saturn and Neptune, which are both retrograde. Saturn retrograde at 25, Neptune retrograde at 29, and sextiling Uranus. So the Mercury, Lilith, Sun are opposite Uranus again. So this one's very similar to the one before, but rather than the Sun working with Lilith by itself, now Mercury is involved, a Mercury retrograde. So not only is our awareness and our attention on Lilith, but our minds are really trying to understand and dwell deep into the experience of the repressed feminine, the empowered repressed feminine, and how society's structure and belief systems and the spiritual aspect of Neptune in its last degree of Pisces is involved in that polarization. Oh boy. Next, we have two cradles. A cradle is two planets opposite of each other. And then, so like they're opposite on the horoscope. And then there's two sextiles. So there's 4 planets involved. And it's like opposition, but 2 planets up here where they're sextiling each other. So the 4 planets are all working together, but the 2 on the outside are in opposition. So this first one starts on November 2nd, so we're already in it. And it's going to go until November 9th. We have Mars at 1 degree Sagittarius, sextile Pluto at 1 degree Aquarius, sextile Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces, sextile Uranus at 0 degrees of Gemini. So Mars and Uranus are opposite each other. The masculine and the, quixotic awakenings of society are in opposition. Mars is trying to explore its power and belief systems and create culture, while Uranus is trying to expand and grow and upgrade. I always want to say, I always keep forgetting to say upgrade and saying up level, but I like upgrade better. So Uranus is trying to upgrade our minds. And then Pluto and Aquarius, this deep transformation of society, and Neptune at the last degree of Pisces, this karmic mysticism and collective spirituality, are both working with these elements that are in opposition. The other cradle starts on November 18th and goes till the 25th. And it's Sun Lilith in Scorpio, sextile Pluto in Aquarius, sextile Saturn in Pisces, and then sextile Uranus in Taurus. So basically, the Sun and Lilith are opposite Uranus, like we talked about before in the wedges, but this time Pluto and Saturn are involved. Sorry, Pluto and Saturn and with Neptune are involved. So the opposition between Sun, Lilith, and Uranus gets the support of both the power dynamic transformation of the first degrees of egalitarian society, and Saturn, Neptune, both at the end of Pisces, looking at the structural spirituality of karma, are both supporting this opposition between Sun and Lilith opposite Uranus. So again, our awareness around the repressed feminine being in opposition to the upgrading that's happening on the planet. Some more fun. We have 3 kites happening in November. Kites are kind of my favorite. There are a lot of these configurations are not talked about too much online, and I said this before, but I'll say it again. It's amazing to me that these haven't kind of broken into the astrology video world. Um, Certain transits are talked about throughout the month that are highlighted, but nobody's talking about these grand configurations, which are just massive. Mm. And I guess part of the reason why I'm into it, you'll hear about grand trines or grand squares, grand crosses, but the cradles, the wedges, T squares, maybe, but kites, not so much. And I like kites because I have 2 of them in my chart, and it's powerful stuff. So a kite involves a grand trine, so you have one big triangle, and then a minor trine, so like a planet that's sextile the other 2, and it looks like a kite if you stood it up or on the side, but it's in that configuration, but it's involving triangles, so supportive relationships, but the opposition of the top and the bottom is a challenging dynamic that's trying to be resolved. So this first kite starts on November 19th and goes until the 21st. Sorry, I kind of flipped it in my notes, but there's a kite that starts on the 18th and goes till the 22nd, and then within the time frame of that kite, there's another one that's happening on the 19th till the 21st. Because they're both involving fast-moving planets, they don't last very long. So the first one, starting on the 18th, is Jupiter in Cancer opposite Pluto in Aquarius. And then Jupiter is trine Saturn with Neptune and trine the Sun with Lilith and Mercury. So Jupiter opposite Pluto, and then Saturn, Neptune over here, and Sun, Lilith, and Mercury over here in Sagittarius. So you have this grand trine with Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Sun, Lilith, and Mercury, um, all working together. And then you have the minor trine of Pluto, Pluto here with Saturn, Neptune, Sun, Lilith, and Mercury. So basically, the opposition between Jupiter and Pluto is the challenge, right? It's this polarizing relationship where those 2 planets are not wanting to work together. And Jupiter is like this expansion, this social experience of our sensitivities and our nurturing feminine experience, the little child within, and it's feeling kind of rejected or polarized by this deep transformation that's happening in society, where the underworld and the power dynamics and the manipulation that's been happening in our society is going through a change. And at the same time, you have Saturn and Neptune trying to support that inner child experience. trying to put more structure and spiritual aspects to our society, our spiritual society, spiritual experience in society. And then Sun, Lilith, and Mercury is like our awareness is also being brought to, and our minds are trying to communicate the experience of the repressed feminine. Then on the 19th, the next day, these are exact dates, right? So you might feel them a day or two before. The Sun, Lilith, and Mercury Sun, Lilith, and Mercury now includes the moon. The moon jumps in there, and that's opposite Uranus, trining Jupiter and trining Neptune and Saturn and Neptune. So it's basically like this repressed feminine mental awareness also pulls in the child, the moon, our sensitivity, and that's opposite this upgrade, this mental electrical upgrade that we're all experiencing on the planet. But then the social planets of Jupiter and Saturn working with Neptune, are both supporting this experience or this polarization. So then the third kite is happening on the 27th through the 30th, so a couple of days. And this is Venus getting involved. So Venus and Lilith together opposite Uranus. So that Lilith and Uranus opposition, like the first kite, is still in play. But now Venus is jumping in with Lilith in Scorpio. So this is like, you know, Venus will be making this deep dive into Scorpio, and mm, it's really about awakening the repression of the feminine, and then how our social systems get involved and support that awakening. Um, Hopefully, we'll see some real, like, profound empowerment towards the end of the month around the feminine and pretty much all aspects of society. The last major configuration I want to talk about is the T square. So there's one that's already happening, started on the 1st. That's when it became exact. So we've already been feeling it for a few days now. And it's Venus opposite Chiron with Jupiter squaring both of those. So Venus is in Libra, Chiron's in Aries, 24 degrees of each, and Jupiter comes around to 24 degrees of Cancer and squares both of them. So there's been this opposition between Venus and Chiron that's like the trying to heal the wounds of the feminine, and that process is going to get a boost from Jupiter and Cancer. This expansion of our emotional reality, our emotional sensitivities, and really exploring our emotional experience is going to support and kind of take the attention off of this polarization between Venus and the deep wound of the masculine. So Venus in Libra has been working on like relationship issues, while the wounded healer Chiron has been working on the masculine wounds. And we're going to feel like both of those are going to take a back seat to Jupiter's transit through Cancer. Then there's another T square happening on November 22nd until the 29th. And that's going to be the nodes, North and South Node in Virgo and Pisces, with Mars squaring both of those. So uh, the way to resolve a T-square is to look at like the fourth element. So what would make it a full grand cross? And that's the element that kind of balances out the whole situation, because obviously like a T-square is not a very balanced situation. It teeters back and forth. So you have Mars in Sagittarius, and um, basically you're going to be looking at what's at like 14 degrees of Gemini to kind of balance the whole dynamic. But basically, the nodes are our evolutionary trajectory from Virgo to Pisces, and then Mars is in Sagittarius is squaring both of those. So Mars is kind of making a choice point. Our masculine nature is kind of putting a destabilizing our evolutionary trajectory, and I mean we can all see that that is taking place these days. So I'm going to leave it there and then jump into another video and talk about the current monthly transits for November. All right.